All right, we're back. What's up, party people? This is the Sunny Ray Show. I'm joined by with Brandon Carpels. This is going to be what our second episode together, right, Brandon? We did
I, I think it
we
might
did an
be our
awesome
third,
one.
but
Our
yeah,
third, okay. I just
yeah,
remember we had a couple of marathons that were a lot
yeah.
of fun. We ended up getting a lot of viewers. So, how have you been since our last talk?
I've been great. However, the last 2 weeks have been a bit harrowing and have been on little sleep, high stress, but I think finally things are starting the wave is finally cresting. So that is good.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I was just sharing with you that I had I'm not going to obviously mention any names, but been through some really tough conversations over the last couple weeks with people that I've known for a very long time that had it all kind of, saved in Bitcoin and lost all of it. And yeah, they're just struggling to figure out what's next for them. So it's been a really, really tough time. I don't think I quite grasp the gravity of the situation when it initially happened, but as I was in New York last week, I was just thinking more and more, and I was like, wow, this is big. So
It
what's
was
what's it
massive.
like in the field? Hey, I saw your you had a like a monologue type of thing you put out a week ago. I listened to the whole thing. I loved it. I thought it took a lot of courage. In fact, just this morning I was talking to somebody, and she's a influencer, and she was just saying, Sunny, like it's just so hard to speak about Bitcoin right now, right? And so the fact that you did that, and you're out there helping people every day, and yeah, it's ushering people through this mess is like it's something to be admired. But to tell us what are you seeing in the front lines, Brandon?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, it was something I felt I needed to do. One was that, personally and professionally, we have best practices and follow them. And thankfully, personally for me and professionally, we saved people all their money. Anyone that we had recommended a cold card to, and including myself, we all generated our own entropy. And that was really important to us as part of our procedures. And so we protected everyone, and everyone was fine, and I was fine, and my family was fine. However, people in my life, friends and family, I kind of just decided that creating their own entropy would be too much, or they won't accept Bitcoin, or I'm not going to be able to get them to buy Bitcoin. And it was very short-sighted, and it was actually I actually sold them short. I basically dumbed everyone in my life down to a point where I was like, they can't handle it. I felt like a central planner. I know best. The masses are too dumb. They're not able to run their own life. And that was something I really, really regret, and have done a lot of soul searching over the last 2 weeks. And that combined with I think God just giving me a wake up call, like, hey man, if I want, all of this is gone tomorrow. Like you're working for me. Like swallow your pride, put your ego away, and get back to work. And to that point, getting back to work, in my personal belief is that God has me in this position, and talking about these other influencers and things like that. And I would say, yes, it's really hard to recommend anything in Bitcoin right now, but at the same time, I think it's going to make all of us better. Like you're not going to be able to be an influencer, just take some ad dollars and shill the product. Like you're going to have to know what you're shilling, because I hope no one gets sued. I hope no one, but there's a potential for some of these influencers that made poor recommendations that lost people money. They might get sued. Now, in the past in this country, there's been all sorts of court cases that say, like, if you're a promotional person, you can't be held liable for the product. So they'll probably be fine. But certainly, reputations have been destroyed. Careers probably, as quote unquote influencers or whatever, destroyed. And I think it's just going to make people in this space have to, including myself, by the way. Not that I'm an influencer, but I influence people in my life personally. Like I'm going to have to be way more stringent about this stuff. I'm going to have to convey the message of self custody is a really serious thing. You need to have a plan. You don't just buy something off the internet, plug it into a computer, and move your Bitcoin there. Maybe if you have a small amount of Bitcoin, that's fine. But for anyone that putting substantial savings or long-term savings in there, it requires dedication. It's going to take hours. And it's going to be a journey that you need to be willing to take on, and stressing the importance of that, I think, is going to make us all better, because it is something that does require a ton of personal responsibility, and that's the price of freedom. That's the price of sovereignty. People love being taken care of. They love safety. They love outsourcing responsibility because it's easier, and it's kind of worked for people for a long time. However, if you want to be sovereign, you got to work your own land. You've got to hold your own money. You've got to raise your own family. You can't just send them to the public school, use the fiat bank account, have a financial advisor, go to the grocery store. Like, you can do all those things in society, but you're not sovereign. You're beholden to someone else. And that might be fine for some people, but if you truly want to hold your own money and have control of your finances, you're gonna have to attach a level of seriousness to it that is probably something you may attach to one or two things in the rest of your life. And I think ultimately that's a good thing, and ultimately it's going to be better. But um, a lot of people had to get hurt. A lot of really good people had to get hurt along the way. So I don't want to dismiss that. I don't want to hand wave it away and say, oh, thanks to the victims, we've tied their corpses together and are floating on top of them as a life raft now. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. But if there is a silver lining here, I think the seriousness with which this industry and everyone moving forward needs to proceed just went up 10x.
Agreed. Agreed. Can we talk about this spectrum of safety versus sovereignty, right? Where, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, maybe safety is not the right word, but sovereignty seems like it's not easy. It's not simple. It seems like there's a lot of work that needs to be put in. And from my observation, most people don't want to put in the work because it's a lot easier just signing on to a brokerage thing and typing NVIDIA and buying, okay, I've got exposure to AI now. I took care of that, is as opposed to now I'm going to spend 4 hours, learn about this thing that even the most hardcore people in the space got wrong, right? And again, it's hard. I'm like swallowing as I'm saying this because I'm speaking to myself, but I'm just trying to think what others are probably thinking, which is like, yeah, how do we how do we get here? How do we move past this? I mean, like I said, I've
Yeah.
got, I don't know, 10 treasures and gold cards and ledgers all over the house, and it's a big part of, I guess you could say, almost who I am, and our entire kind of identities being ripped out from in front of us. However, the silver lining, Brandon, is Bitcoin is still Bitcoin. Bitcoin
Hmm.
hasn't necessarily been interrupted. It's like these things along the periphery, right? So I don't know, that's kind of my silver lining here, but I don't know, help me think through some of this. Like how do
Yeah.
you wrestle with these things?
Yeah, so I'll just say, I mean, taking it to the most extreme, like sovereignty in your life, right? Like, there's always the example of the lion in the cage in the zoo, right? And their food's brought out to them. They sit there. They're not allowed to move around too much, but they're fed. They wake up, they nap, and then there's the lion that's out in the plains of the Serengeti, and they have to go hunt for their food. And so uh, one life is way easier. I see it around my neighborhood all the time. We have a lot of public housing and public services, and there's just people that live in one bedroom places paid for by the state. They wake up, they take their link card, they go to the grocery store, they pay for their groceries with, food stamps, and they don't do anything on their own. They're completely beholden to the rules of the complex they live in, what products they can buy at the grocery store. I think half of them still have to wear masks when they go into their building, and that what number are you on the health list of people to get to you today? And so that is a choice that some people make. These are voluntary decisions. Almost all of these people are perfectly capable of working, getting their life together, having sovereignty over their life. They choose not to, and maybe it's mental illness, maybe it's addiction, maybe it's whatever. But at the end of the day, it's still within their control. They've just chosen to be wards of the state, basically, and that's kind of the ultimate safety and security, right? They get their meals, they have shelter, and their most basic needs are met, but their life is completely unfulfilling. They don't get to experience the joys of life. I'm sure most of them don't have families. I'm sure none of them are going out to experience the world and doing things on their own, actually creating things, building things. And so they're just missing out on 95% of life. And when you want to be sovereign, you do have to take control of all of those things. And there's varying degrees of sovereignty. There's extreme sovereignty where you're homesteading off grid, you're completely self reliant, and and then there's the spectrum of everything in between. It's how much sovereignty do you want in your life? And every time you decide to go from the ward of the state to the off grid homesteader, you have to take more and more responsibility along the way. And not everyone wants to do that. However, your life is so much more enriching. And as you start compounding those things, as you start getting more sovereign, as you do something as simple as for example, I had a panel, I had a bunch of repairs done to my car this week. The people that repaired it, they left the panel just hanging underneath. And I couldn't figure it out. I went through like four AI models, blah blah blah, did all this stuff. Finally, like after a week of trying to troubleshoot this thing, all these different solutions that didn't work, I finally got something that worked yesterday. And it felt so satisfying. It was like rewarding to me. And I felt good that I accomplished something. I put the time in. I have a finished product at the end that came out that's now benefiting me, my family, and now our cars, doesn't have to go back to the shop. We don't have to pay more money for repairs. And just things like that that are enriching to your life that you have no idea you're missing out on when you choose a path of non-sovereignty, and just little stupid things like that along the way. It actually is enriching to your life and improving you as a human being. And we only have so much time here, and if you're not going to make the most of your time here and actually have agency and control over your life, what's the point? You're just in it for your most basic needs, your most hedonistic desires. And that's just, like every story in the Bible is about like that being completely unacceptable to God. And it's not just Christianity. All sorts of religions have like the don't just be a sort of derelict wandering through life. Take control of your life and do stuff for, whether it's for God or your community or whatever. You have to be willing to sacrifice the safety and security of someone else doing everything for you for a level of sovereignty. And in my opinion, there is nothing more important. There is nothing. We've moved. Sorry, I'm going to go off on a little tangent. We've moved from chattel slavery, physical slavery, to debt slavery. And people don't realize it, but their entire lives are controlled by having to pay some sort of debt back. That could be property taxes. That could be um, uh, uh, your mortgage. That could be student loans. That could be your credit card. Whatever. It's our entire society is just driven by being beholden to needing debt to purchase something, and then having to work to repay that debt with interest on top of that debt. Um, that people created the money out of thin air. And so we're really just beholden to creditors and lenders at this point as a society and as individuals. And so while the physical chains aren't there and the guy's not whipping us, we've moved into a softer form of slavery, and we're sacrificing our souls and our autonomy for the comfort of having a place to sleep and a bed at the end of the day, or excuse me, and a meal at the end of the day. And I don't think people realize how much of their soul is being sucked away by not taking control of their life. And yes, it's harder. Yes, it requires more time. Yes, it requires responsibility, but you will feel so much more enriched. And, I liken it to people who eat terrible food all the time, and they don't even know they feel disgusting. And, or, just drinking sugary sodas all the time. And it's not until I was this person, and it's not until you start eating properly, you start getting your diet under control, and then you start to realize how terrible you felt before and how good you feel after. And it's kind of the same thing with sovereignty. It's like until you actually start taking it on and feeling the benefits of it and experiencing it in your life, you don't even know the kind of soft, subtle misery that you're actually experiencing day to day. And so I would say that's kind of, as we think about how important self-custody is, sovereignty over our money, we're really buying back the ability to not be beholden to creditors, lenders, banks, all these other things that that are making our lives way worse than we even understand.
Yeah, yeah, no, that really resonates. I think one hard question here is whether we sometimes talk about sovereignty in a way that sounds morally right, but is still too hard for most people to live out day to day, right? So what does an honest kind of on ramp look like for normal users?
Yeah, as I was saying, I think a conversation needs to be had that this is a serious thing, that this is something you need to take serious. And maybe there's approach where if someone wants to park a lot of their wealth in Bitcoin because they understand the value proposition, but don't understand the network and how it works, maybe you take a small amount and just put that into like a simple self custody solution, just one of your traditional hardware wallets, off a Bitbox, a Trezor, a Jade, whatever. Maybe you have it, and then start to learn how things work, interact with different applications, different softwares, send money around, receive, get comfortable, and then get a more and then meanwhile have your Bitcoin in something like a multi-institution, multi um, sig setup, something like that for a short period of time while you figure everything out, and then go into it. And so I I I just think approaching your personal setup with a lot more seriousness and a lot more rigor as to how you're set up at the beginning. So spending the extra time up front, lay out a plan, have a map, put it all out there. Where do you want your keys, portions of keys? Do you want a single sig? Do you want a multi sig? Do you want a passphrase? And really have a plan to start, and then go. Don't just order something offline and have it shipped to you, plug it in, move all your Bitcoin there, and then stuff it in the drawer and put your seed phrase in the safe deposit box and call it a day. So I just think yeah, a lot more seriousness and rigor needs to be had
You know,
entering into this.
and Brandon, I wonder if the real break here is that we treated self custody like a product choice when it's really an operating system or like a practice, right? So how do we make that clear
Mm.
without pushing normal people back towards, full dependence on institutions?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, I hadn't thought of that framing, but that is right. We were basically like, you can choose the self-custody option, or you choose the institution option, or you choose the custodial option, or you choose the multi-institution option. Whereas it really does need to be framed as an operating system, a life choice that you're going to make. And I think we just have to um I think we just have to do a good job of explaining to people the value of self-sovereignty, and taking control of your money, and having custody of your own money, and as opposed to just um the downsides, because really what self-custody was sold as was a prophylactic to the downsides of non-self custody, right? So we had all these exchange hacks, we had Mount Gox, we had uh, uh, Voyager, Celsius, I mean FTX. The list is endless, and it was just so much Bitcoin was lost, and it was like we must have an antidote to this problem, and that antidote was self custody, and we just basically sold it that way, as opposed to, not only is it an antidote to these problems, however, it's also this other thing where it's a personal decision you're making, and one that should be approached with seriousness, that takes a ton of responsibility to do this, as opposed to just the opposite of what had caused problems before.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. I keep coming back to this like gap between kind of sovereignty in theory and sovereignty in practice because if even very serious people, Brandon, got this wrong, like what does a realistic middle ground look like for people who, want control but are not going to become security experts?
Yeah, it's well, that's kind of the service we offer at Sovereign, is that, hey, we understand you're not going to be a security expert. We understand you're not going to be perfect at this. Like I said, we have our people create their own entropy. If they want to do multi-sig, we customize a plan. And so, uh, I again, I just come back to this thing. I don't think there's like a silver bullet, just real easy answer. Like there's this one product that everyone can just buy and move their Bitcoin there, and we just, la di da, we're on our way. Especially with what's happened the last couple weeks with AI, and the capabilities of these LLMs and stuff. It's like we're in a full on digital war at this point. Like this is basically um, a digital version of World War II for our generation. Like that's kind of what we're living through right now, and it does come back to sovereignty. It's like, how much control do you want to have over your life? What tools are out there? How do you fight for it? And in the meantime, there's all of these attack angles and attack vectors that have just been opened up by machines basically being able to poke holes in all of our digital defenses and infrastructure. And it's just going to require um uh you know uh combating that, and coming up with solutions. And I the more and more I've thought about this the last couple weeks, is I just think we have to approach it with, there isn't an easy answer. Like there's just not. You are going to have to accept some level of personal responsibility, and a level that may even make you uncomfortable. And if you're not ready for that, I almost just would say, like, if you're not ready for that, then I want you to do some more learning. And so I don't feel comfortable um getting you into a situation. I'm not comfortable recommending something for you if you're not willing to approach this with a sense of gravity, that this really matters, it is really important, and you're willing to dedicate time. This is not like a 30-minute phone call with me to get you into Bitcoin. And I think just going forward, I'm going to take that approach. And sure, for small amounts, for doing your first transaction, for buying $1,000, yeah, okay, I'll make some buy this, do this, start here. That's fine. But anyone that's actually serious about getting into Bitcoin, parking some real money there, I just think there's got to be like a filter at the beginning, a just are you willing to approach this very seriously, take this very seriously? Are you willing to do a lot more than you have to date for your finances and for your personal savings? And just let that be like, if yes, great, okay, let's move on to the next step. If not, you're not ready. Like you need to you need to learn more, understand more, be willing to take this serious, and then we can talk later. So I just don't think there's a silver bullet where it's super easy.
And Brandon, can we talk about two more things though? Like, can we talk about first of all two things? Like, because I mean, it almost feels like people who did two things were kind of okay. One was roll the dice, which
Hmm.
is kind of funny to think that you know what I mean. Like rolling the dice is usually, has an association with gambling or whatever, but it's like
Gambling, seedy
entropy and
alleys.
randomness and all these ideas aren't really things that most people get their head around, right? So there's that randomness that was a big mess up, right, on the part of Cold Card. Then there was then there's the idea of multi-sig, right, which is building kind of like a Fort Knox for your Bitcoin. And from what I understand, even if you had two faulty cold cards, but you were using something like Casa, you're in the clear, right? So can we just kind of parse through like why did those two groups of people do well? Like what did they do extra? What did they do better? Like where are the lessons in there? And how do we pave a path forward for, again, for let's say a family office that's like sitting on you're going, okay, I know Bitcoin's the future of digital capital, et cetera, et cetera. But I know, that there will be a way for us to like secure our future and our family's future. But they're still scared, right? They're hesitant. So can you explain kind of those, that the dice and the randomness and the entropy and how the world or the Bitcoin world is getting a real lesson in that? And then also this other side, which is multi-sig, which could have and will, I guess, maybe present a path forward for how to really keep your Bitcoin safe.
Yeah, so just to be clear, if you had two cold cards in your multi-sig setup, you were not safe. So, or assuming it was a two of three. So,
Got it.
however, no one, even to this day, none of the MK4s I've heard of have been tapped into yet. Probably a lot of people have moved, and the multi-sig never got tapped because it just required so much more energy compute to get those setups. So those setups are vulnerable. Given enough time, they will be taken, but it saved them in the short term, allowed them to get into a better setup because it just required so much more compute to break multiple levels of bad entropy. So let's go. We'll circle back to, well, so let's just go. Okay, so the multi-sig setup is definitely something for any high net worth individual, family office. At Sovereign, we recommend that. We basically make people dedicate 3 key holders minimum, figure out if they want to do it, and then offer other services as well. Services like Casa, Unchained, um, I and there's a couple others out there as well, where that someone in the family office or the individual, they can hold 1 or 2 keys, and then have an institution hold 1 or 2 keys as well, if that makes them, excuse me, feel better. So for any serious, that kind of money, professional, even businesses, same thing. We recommend, if it's not just a small business, small single owner operated business that's really close knit, it's basically just a lifestyle business, that kind of thing. Any serious business, any serious amount of capital, we always recommend multi-sig setup with distributed keys to distributed people within the organization, and then multiple backups of both, and putting those in appropriate places. And so multi what I going and we did this as well, but just even personally, I'm like multi-vendor, multi-sig, that's kind of the gold standard. So even if you do have a cold card incident, you still have two other wallets that didn't fail, right? And you bought yourself time to your funds are all safe. You can swap out the cold card. You can bring a new key into your quorum and you can move on like nothing happened. We could wake up. We were talking at BitDevs last night. We could wake up tomorrow and find some bug in like the Trezor software where Trezor is exposing your keys when you send a transaction from a multi. Like we don't know, right? I'm not saying that exists. I'm not saying people haven't looked for that, but there's a potential where there's something we haven't even thought of that could compromise your wallet, right? And so we have no idea. That's why the multi-sig, multi-vendor approach. And really what you're doing is you're just building redundancy, right? You're not allowing a single point of failure. What happened with the cold card was a single point of failure. People had their setups and they had a single point of failure. And so by diversifying to multi-vendor, multi-sig, you're just creating multiple points of, you have to have multiple points of failure to lose your Bitcoin or to have your Bitcoin taken. And so that's the value proposition
Brandon, I
of,
have a quick
yeah,
quick question for you. Have
yeah.
you ever heard of the idea of paper wallets?
Yes, I think they're a terrible idea. But
Can I ask
yeah,
why? Just because, like I'm still having to introduce all these vendors, and I don't know if you saw, but yesterday Trezor had another data breach, and Ledger has a
yeah.
famous one. Like, my point is there a way where, it's like all about not trusting, right? So, like, is there a way to minimize that trust? I don't know. Like, so why do paper wallets break down? And is there something that we can get to that's just more to the point that connects the Bitcoin network to the end user and allows them to kind of just create some sort of multi-sig? No, right? Not that I've heard of, but I'm just wondering, like, there's got to be some sort of
Well,
innovation coming out here without me having to buy 5 hardware USB sticks and do jumping jacks and backstroke. I mean, it's a lot. Like, and I've been in this space for 13 years. I love Bitcoin, but got to make it a little bit simpler, no?
I mean, I think that's the recognition. What I was talking about earlier is like it's just you're just going to have to approach it seriously. You're going to have to accept that, yeah, you are going to have to buy three devices. You are going to have to
Mm,
put your seed. You're going to have to create your own entropy, which we'll get to in a second. I know you asked about that.
yeah.
You're going to have to create your own entropy, use multiple devices, and then you're going to have multiple backups for each of those devices. And like that's just going to have to be your standard going forward. Now, some people are just, I'm good with single sig and a complicated passphrase, and I store those in separate locations. And that's cool. And if that's good for you, if that's your setup, if you feel comfortable with it, that's fine. But as sort of the goal, the Bitcoin standard, if you will, of setups. I think it's always been multi-vendor, multi-sig. I think it's just become the last 2 weeks have just highlighted why that's so critical and the need to just make that be the standard going forward to have true and proper security. Like that's just going to have to be what it is. And to that point, so um, entropy is entropy is one of those weird words where it has like 8 different definitions, and they're all kind of not related. Um, and so it's used in physics differently than it's used in biology, used differently than it is in mathematics. And entropy in this case, really just what we're talking about is randomness. So um, we're talking about how random is your seed phrase. And when you so what happened with the cold card incident is it had very low entropy, so it the amount of seed phrases that were possible from the cold card random number generator were very low, so it was just a small universe of possible seed phrases, and that's how the attackers were able to pick it out. It relied on some software. It didn't create enough entropy. It was using around 40 or 30 bits of entropy on the MK3 and standard minimum threshold entropy to properly secure your Bitcoin wallet. I shouldn't say minimum. Uh, the standard is 128 bits of entropy is um, enough security where if you had all the computing power in the world and 8,000 Earth lifetimes, you're still never going to find the seed. And so that's for 12 words. For 24 words, it's actually, when done properly, you actually get 256 bits of entropy, and is, just that's like the belt and suspenders approach, if you will. So no one's brute forcing any of the 128 bits of entropy or higher passphrases. But unfortunately, in the cold card incident, the device itself was not generating enough entropy and creating enough randomness. And so, because the seed phrases that were created weren't random enough, they looked normal to the end user. The end user has no idea um, how random things were, and but a computer does, and a computer could winnow down the pool of possible seed phrases to a much smaller potential group of seed phrases, and then they were able to find the seed phrase, see if there was Bitcoin in there. I won't get into the technicals of hashing and moving and everything, but basically they found the seed phrases that had Bitcoin attached to it and were able to move those on the network. And that's why, personally, I always rolled the dice. 100 is 256 bits of entropy. I think technically 99, but whatever. I'm a paranoid psychopath, so I would roll like 150 dice minimum, and it's just adding unnecessary entropy, but so be it. And that's what we recommended for our customers. And there's other ways to do it too. You could flip a coin 128 times or 256 times. You could, there's some devices out there like the seed signer that takes a picture, and no picture will ever be identical. The way the light comes in, um, what you're wearing, how your glasses are situated, how your ring is situated, how your watch is situated. Like, no picture will ever be identical, and so that's a way to create entropy too. So there's ways out there to create enough randomness to make sure your seed phrase is part of a pool that is so large and impossibly big that no one can ever find your seed phrase. And unfortunately, with the cold card, the possibilities were not that large, and they were people were able to find them with just simple desktop computers.
Yep, got it. Makes sense. Yeah, I got some visuals up here for what multi-sig looks like, and I was just trying to put some stuff together to help with what you're describing. Cool. Well, I think we're near the end here, Brandon. Oh man, I always really enjoy these talks with you. I know we went into some difficult places, but hey, I mean, this is what people are thinking about, and trying to figure out how they're going to protect their family's legacy and how they're going to make it to the next day. So definitely a tough conversation, but at the same time, it's like these types of conversations are the ones that kind of like forge who you are and make you stronger and better. And so, yeah, if anyone's out there and they're, going through something, they want to talk, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, please do. And again, this is why we sit down. This is why we think this service is important, because we really do think it's appropriate to get this right. And a lot of people are going to make mistakes or just not approach it with the seriousness that it needs to be approached with. And a lot of times, having someone holding you accountable, as we have our customers set up their own entropy and create their own wallets and stuff like that, like, we're there making sure they do it. Like, we don't let you get off the hook of like, oh, I just decided to, like, no, 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 you're gonna do this. And a lot of times it just does take like an accountability partner or someone with you to encourage you and even just make you feel comfortable along the way, because it can be daunting, it can be um, a lot, but that is the value add of services like ours at Sovereign. And there's other people out there doing this as well. I'm not saying we're the only source of truth or value on this topic. We're just one of them out there. And
Yeah.
um, just making sure people take this seriously, do it the right way, and having someone there with you to do it is can make all of this that as you're talking about, Sonny, that like may seem overwhelming, and how do we make this easy for the masses? And I've really reflected on this in the past 2 weeks, and I do think this is going to have to become like like a trade that gets passed down from generations in families, right? Like it's going to have to be something that dad passes down to the son or the daughter, and or professionals pass down to other people. I think it's a skill that's going to have to be passed down through people. It's not just something that just willy-nilly gets it's almost like driving, right? Like when you have your learner's permit, your dad or mom are in the car with you, and when you open your first checking account, you're at the bank, and your mom or dad is showing you how to do a check. Like all of these things that parents and previous generations do for generations coming up, words of wisdom, healthy eating, exercise, all these kind of things that we're teaching our progeny. I think this is just going to have to become part of it, that one of those things that gets passed down almost like a skill or a trade to the next generations to have the benefits of Bitcoin and self-custody.
Cool, man. Brandon, thank you so much. Thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate all of you as usual. Yeah, Brandon, maybe we can make this more of a regular occurrence every couple of weeks. We should get back on here and talk about Bitcoin stuff and keep pushing the ball forward. Brandon,
Would love to.
Sovreign,
Thanks, Sonny.
yeah, with
Yeah,
Sovreign, SOVREIGN.io. People can learn
you
more.
got
And
it.
I have a lot of people reaching out to me. They're in a state of, some in panic, some in confusion. And so yeah, feel free to reach out to Brandon. And he's somebody that I trust and we work with. So happy to send people your way as well, Brandon, if people reach out.
Yeah, please
Yeah, all
do.
right.
And if you've been, just real quick, I know you got to go, Sonny, but
Yeah,
just
it's
real
okay.
quick, if you've just been sitting on the sidelines, scared to act, scared to do something, like please just do something. Like there are solutions. People will help you. Just reach out to you can reach out to me personally. You can find me on LinkedIn, shoot me a message, go to the website, contact us. Like someone is there willing to help. Please just do it.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about Bitcoin, right? It's like it's a community of people that just come together. Awesome, Brandon. Thank
Exactly.
you all. Take care.
Thanks,
Cheers. Bye
Sonny.
bye.